Hello everyone, I'm Tracy Koga and welcome to Hue at Home. Michelle Reddy loves her family, just like everyone else. And when the family is threatened, she feels their pain and concern. But what happens when they're thousands of miles apart? I have a very personal conversation with Michelle as she talks more about the plight her family is facing in Durban, South Africa. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for taking this time to spend with us on Hue at Home. Your story, amazing is not the right word, but I think compelling is. We live so far away from your home country in South Africa. Tell us now why you are so worried for your family back home.
2 weeks ago, there was an attempted insurrection in the country. And basically my hometown was looted, and literally all supply chain and businesses were burnt down. About 40,000 businesses were burnt down, and my entire extended family and immediate family live in Durban, and their communities were attacked. A form of kind of reversed racism incited by political parties. And unfortunately, it is civilians and my family that have lost their jobs, that have lost basic essential goods to survive. And right now, currently, parts of my city have no water. Babies have no formula. Essentials like bread and milk have run out. So they are getting help from neighboring provinces, but eventually that will run low as well.
It must be harrowing to know that your family is there, and right now there's not a lot you can do, but you are trying, right? You are trying to do something.
I have been trying to amplify the situation because I would say that since the death of Nelson Mandela, countries seem to have turned their back on South Africa, and issues that have arisen are being reported as racial issues, but there's no racial issues to the extent of burning down an entire province, causing like 57 billion rands worth of damages within the country and the infrastructure. So for me, being so far away from home, I feel hopeless and helpless. And as a single person being new to Canada, I don't have that support system to reach out and say, how can we help? So I have started one step at a time, one day at a time. Also at the same time, speaking to family members back home and giving them that hope, hey, the rest of the world is watching, you're not alone. And hearing the screams of mothers with their babies terrified for their lives in the middle of a civil war has been heart-wrenching. Thankfully, a few doors have been opened in allowing me platforms, and you being one of those platforms, which I absolutely appreciate. And yeah, I've been kind of going one step at a time, reaching out to people and saying, how can you help people that I don't even know? Because I guess when you are that desperate to save your family from terrorism and hunger, you would do anything as a person. And I don't think it only has to do with South Africa, but as a humanitarian and a person who advocates for human rights, it's something that has really resonated with me. And I will continue to do this no matter where I am with the resources that I have.
It's interesting too, you are 6th generation East Indian in South Africa. How did it get to this, Michelle? Or has it always been?
So I grew up, I was born in South Africa, and I grew up through the apartheid system in South Africa. And being of East Indian origin, previously in the apartheid South Africa, we were not white enough. And now in the democracy, the new democracy of South Africa, we are not black enough. So you kind of get sandwiched. And unfortunately, during apartheid, there were we were targeted, soft targets, because as you know, when there's any kind of pressure with poverty, they will look at targeting people that are more vulnerable. So in the old apartheid days, people of East Indian origin were targeted because the natives felt that they came as indentured laborers and they are successful. And so they cannot go up against a government that is as combat skills, so they will go after people that are more vulnerable and target them to take out their frustrations, right? And we can go back to this with what happened in Germany with the Jewish people during the Depression. The Germans or Hitler said, it's the Jewish people that are thriving, so let's go. And that's how Kristallnacht started, right? The Night of Broken Glass. And it's kind of the similar scenario that's happening. The situation is still very volatile. So my main concern is getting help in the sense of medical help and food help and long and short term sustainability for the people of KwaZulu-Natal. And I don't know how much I can do as an individual, but I'm trying.
Oh, and your family too. I mean, it must be so hard. And being so far away, we talked about that. Let's talk about your journey here to Winnipeg too, which is quite interesting.
I've been here since 2016. My journey has not been easy because I'm trying to adapt to an entirely new culture. I'm trying to adapt to a climate change with the cold. And as I've said to a lot of Canadians that ask me, of all the places in the world, why Winnipeg? And I said, and I've been always saying, I didn't choose Winnipeg. Winnipeg chose me, and I am here. And it has been, I wouldn't say it has been an easy transformation or adapting to Canada. It's been a bit of good. It's been a bit of lessons. I'm not going to say bad. I'm gonna say lessons. I've learned a lot of lessons, and I'm still learning. And with those lessons, I grow, and I try to leverage off those lessons when I meet other immigrants or refugees, people far away from home. I can relate to if their family is going through a hard time, how it must feel when they don't have a support system within the country and no representation. So these are things that have opened up for me, that the importance of a community. And I've actually, being of East Indian descent, I find myself being more South African first and then East Indian. And unfortunately, in Canada, there's not a very good or strong support system for South Africans. So I find myself stuck between East Indian and Canadian. And I've reached out to the East Indian Association of Manitoba because I can relate to the East Indians to a degree, right? So, and I'm waiting for that support.
Yes.
So,
Identity. That this has come up a lot now, even with what's happening in our country with our Indigenous peoples and residential schools and stories coming up and people feeling the need to belong, right?
inclusivity.
Inclusive. So what does that mean to you?
I've been struggling with fitting in. I would have to say that especially when you're coming in at a time in your life where you are kind of very set in your ways and trying to fit into a place where people will have friendships and relationships from back in school, and suddenly you are the new kid on the block, and you have to open yourself up to all kinds of people. And then, of course, with that comes a huge amount of disappointment because you have these expectations of people, and then and suddenly people are so curious to know about you, to know your story. And the minute you say your story, it's like, oh my God, that's too heavy for me. I need to step back from this relationship, right? So you're not sure whether you should be vulnerable to let people know who you are, or whether you should put on this facade. And I'm not a person about facades, right? I want that genuine relationship. I want that relationship like you have with all your friends, but I can't get that. So I found that fitting in has been a struggle, the sense of loneliness, and I think it just amplifies that distance between your home country and where you are. And again, it comes down to my background coming out of oppression and struggle, and then having a different kind of oppression and struggle in your new adoptive country.
I know.
Right? And then when you look at your residential schools, and again, having volunteered at the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, I do understand the 16 genocides that Canada amplifies. I do understand the history of how the museum was started by Israel Asper. And for me, I just feel I was very proud when the museum had, did the exhibit for Nelson Mandela. It was a very, when I walked into that exhibit, it was a very emotional time for me. A lot of learning, unlearning and relearning, unlearning and relearning. It's a constant right now, right? Unlearning and relearning, because we all have internal biases. And it's very important for us to look at these internal biases and work on it, because we've all been conditioned over generations to look at people differently. And if we want to make that change, we have to look at our own internal biases, whether it's a religious bias, whether it's a race bias, whether it's whatever bias, a gender bias. We have to look at that and learn that we do not want to encourage these biases for the next generation, right? And again, it comes down to education, right? So when it comes to Canada's history, I can tell you that the Group Areas Act from Canada was the blueprint that South Africa used for apartheid. That is a fact. And the reserves that were created, we had Group Areas Act and segregation. So I grew up in an East Indian area, and up till now in South Africa, we will refer to different areas as a white area, as an Indian area, as a black area. So when you look at the residential school, my heart breaks for the children and I can't even say it's a residential school. I would call it vet camps. I have to be honest, because I am tired of being polite and using words that people are okay with, right? And that's not okay. If it's a genocide, it's a genocide. Whether it's it's both a cultural genocide and a genocide to people, because you try to get rid of young people who are future leaders, right? So when I look at that and I look at what happened back home, the importance of the Truth and Reconciliation program is imperative, because if you don't, you will have exactly what's happening in South Africa happening here. So we have to look at other countries and like sweeping things under the carpet, and it's important to give money for infrastructure, to education, employment, and inclusivity and equity, right? I wouldn't say diversity, because diversity is, I would say, we have a group of different people, which is diverse. Inclusivity and equity is what you look at, right? Because people want a sense of belonging. And right now, I'm not the only one that's alone in belonging. I think there's a lot of people alone in belonging. It's just that they don't speak out about it, or they don't have a platform to speak out about it. And again, I keep going back to the Human Rights Museum. I think they play a vital role in Winnipeg. As a volunteer there, I saw a lot of Americans coming through, and I did the interpretive tour guides there. So I saw them coming like, oh my God, I didn't know this. And they walked out educated. And there's a lot of Winnipeggers asked, have you been to the museum? And they were like, no, we haven't.
I know.
Right?
In your own backyard.
And I'm sad that there's all these resources there to educate people, and it's not being properly utilized, right? So I think from a human rights perspective and a humanitarian perspective, the Human Rights Museum should play a more vital role in our community to address these issues, because they have the credibility to address these issues, right? And having a platform for credibility is imperative for change.
So in essence, we should start change right here, since we have everything.
Well, there's a saying, you should clean your own backyard before you go and clean someone else's backyard, right? So I believe change starts at home. They say charity begins at home. And we need to see the change here in order for us to create that ripple effect of change across the country and then across the world. Right?
So true. Yes.
Right?
So what would be your biggest wish right now, Michelle?
My biggest wish right now would be personally, when I look at, if you're talking about South Africa, my people are suffering. They are still living terrorized. The situation is still volatile. I cannot change the political landscape of the country, but I can change it by making sure that people have food, running water, and basic needs, right? And to be able to give them that hope that the rest of the world is watching. We do know what's happening, and this has got nothing to do with what race you are, what religion you are. It's everything to do with humanity, and that's what I am. I am a humanitarian. It doesn't matter what color you are. If you need help, I will reach out and help you.
Well, we certainly want to support you.
Thank you.
And hoping that this touches and reaches other people too as well.
So right now, I am in talks with the South African High Commissioner, because again, it's credibility, and I'm trying to get a letter from her so that I can give to other organizations so that we can raise some funds to send to South Africa. We are looking for a conduit that is already created, like the Canadian Red Cross, to use them as a platform to raise funds or perishable, non-perishable items that we can send back. That's one of the things we're working on. And again, I can do Manitoba. Again, I don't know a lot of people around Canada, and hopefully someone out there will know someone, and we can have strength in numbers, right?
Exactly.
To be able to do it in unity, and this is how you plant a seed, and when it bears fruit, and that fruit can be eaten by everybody, not just South Africans, but it provides that platform that, hey, if we can do this for South Africa, we can do this for other countries where humanitarian need is needed, right?
Oh, well, you know what? They say friendly Manitoba, and we have I think, the world's biggest population of volunteer work. So I'm sure this is a great place to start.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Tracy.
Girl, you know what's up. Ooh, say what, say what, say what. Girl, you know what's up. Ooh, say what, say what, say what. So girl, you know what's up. I'm feeling you. I'm feeling you. Girl, you know what's up. Say I'm feeling you. And I'm holding you. So tell me what's up. Tell me what's up. Girl, you know what's up. Ooh, say what, say what, say what. Girl, you know what's up.
Welcome back to Hue at Home. Well, restrictions are loosening and we are getting out more, and that means socializing. We'd like you now to meet Susan Coos. She's a positivity practitioner and founder of Socialish. What is that all about? Well, here's Susan with more.
Hi, I'm Susan Coos, positivity practitioner and founder of Socialish. Today I'm going to talk to you about adding positive micro moments into your day. Over the past year, many of us are feeling our mental health slipping with all the negativity and the stress and the change that we're experiencing. You know, wherever we look, we're bombarded with constant exposures on a daily basis, whether it's COVID experiences, climate change, racial injustices, or neighbor versus neighbor conflicts. You name it, it's there, and it's literally coming at us from everywhere. We'll see it in our morning news, we'll see it on our social media posts, we'll see it on TV, and just, day-to-day conversations with family and friends. And a constant exposure to all this negativity can lead to poor mental and physical health. But we don't actually have to start our days with a negative anchor. We can instead infuse positive micro moments throughout the day. Now, what do I mean by positive micro moments? Those are really just short, small bits of positivity that maybe last from a couple of seconds to maybe a minute or so. And they're peppered throughout the day, and you can just pay attention to them several times a day and keep that as part of your daily routine. So here's some ways that you can do that. First of all, you can start with the launch in the morning. Begin your day with a positive launch. Meditate, exercise, journal, or maybe read something that's uplifting to start your day. I suggest not the news, not emails, and definitely not social media. Uh, for example, one thing I've started recently is taking morning walks in my neighborhood, and I just check out to see what's going on. Maybe if it's really early, I watch the sunrise or I see what wild animals are scouting around the neighborhood. It's always interesting and entertaining. And it's been a great way for me to start my day. So that's my first start of my positive micro moments. Throughout the day, you can pepper these into what's going on with you. So things like watching a funny YouTube video, or you can subscribe to some comic strips so you can check some of these jokes out during the day, or maybe enjoy an uplifting chat with a friend or a colleague throughout the day, or even a quick text. Those are great too. But I strongly suggest that you avoid getting sucked into the venting that can happen when we latch onto something negative, or those long drawn out negative conversations, because those are very draining and they have longer lasting effects. Instead, what can we do? Well, we do have to pay attention to what's going on in our world. There's a lot of information that we do need to be aware of from on a personal basis and also through our work. So I suggest choose a short time during the day to connect with information on a need to know basis. Stay current and up to date, and highlight and identify what you can control and do something about it. But if it's content and stuff that you really can't control, lovingly detach from it and let go of that, and just stick with what you can control. But I also encourage you not to spend a long time with this. Don't linger with that information, but instead take responsive action and choose to do something about it. And finally, towards the end of the day, when you're having your evening routine, for example, you can end the day with some positive landings. So, for example, you might have a gratitude list that you write out just before bed. And honestly, it can be good things that are happening, but also can be not so good things, because there's some gratitude that can come from the things that are not always the best parts of our lives. You can read some fiction books versus nonfiction. It's always much better to read a fiction book just before bed, or maybe do some visualization or listen to some uplifting music. A few ways to do that. Another thing that we're doing in our family right now is we're watching Ted Lasso for the fourth time, because it's so funny, and it's just one way that we can come together as a family just before we go to sleep, watch a little bit of Ted Lasso, uh, and have a smile on our face, and then go through our bedtime routine. So one thing I'd suggest that you can do there. So as we go through this time, no, we can't control everything that happens to us, absolutely, but we do have some control over how we interact and respond with that information. And I encourage you, where you can, start peppering in some positive micro moments, and you'll see that you'll have that uplifting feeling throughout the day and be able to manage through things much better than you have been in the past. I'm Susan Coos with Socialish, and I will see you next time. Enjoy.
We want to give a big thank you to all of our special guests and leave you with this question. What would be your charity of choice and why? We want to know, so email us at hello@ilikehue.com or message us on Facebook or Instagram at iLikeHue. But for now, stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll see you next time on Hue at Home.